Good afternoon, everyone. As you know, my name is Zenzi Sewa, and my guest today here on Spiritual Infinity is Christian de la Huerta, and he's in Colorado. And we were just talking, and I said to him, "Are you facing the mountains?" He said, "Yes." And I said, "I'm jealous." He said, "The air is so clean because I'm here in London, England. Weather comes and goes, but it's promising from today not to rain, and we're supposed to get warmer and warmer." But Christian said quite jealously, he's been honest, that there's 300 odd days of sunshine where he is. And I thought, okay. So without much further ado, Christian, welcome.
Hey, Zenzi. So thanks so much for having me.
So as you know, our talk is just about connecting and listening to different people's journey to connecting to their spirituality. And today you have the platform to let us know what was your journey, where you started, because we're all going through journeys throughout the year and throughout the world. And we're lost and confused and don't know what to do. And just by listening to others, it can help us to say, probably I should do this and I should do that. And it's to help each one of us so that we can live a happier life and find our way through the mire. So without much ado, Christian, tell us your story, please.
Well, I'll start by saying that I believe we're all spiritual beings,
Yes.
who happen to be having a physical experience
Yes.
for one time or many times, depending on your system of belief.
Yes.
The problem is that, like in my case, I threw the baby out with the water because we confused religion and spirituality.
Mhm.
So I wanted nothing to do with a God that was judgy and micromanaging and busybody and punitive. I wanted nothing to do with that. And so, but I didn't know at the time that there was a difference between religion and spirituality. So I know I've always been on some kind of path. I've translated it at different points in my life in different ways. Initially, I thought I was going to be a priest. I went to a Jesuit all-boys school, so that's what I knew. Then, once I went through that phase of my life where I wanted nothing to do with religion, then I started to explore different spiritual paths. I looked eastward. I learned about meditation. I learned about breath work. And also honor and am fed by indigenous traditions, done many sweat lodges and experiences like that. So these days for me, it's about like removing what's in the way of our spiritual essence and finding ways of expressing that are a match for who we are.
Yes, I quite agree. And I often say to my viewers and people I work with, we are spiritual beings with a physical body having a human experience. And we have lived many times before. And we're here to grow spiritually. We're here to grow our spirit and to become that being that we are created to be. And that somehow we lost our way, and now we're finding our way home so that we can stand up and be that energy.
Exactly. Could not agree more.
So, what's your story, Christian?
Well, part of what complicated that search for me was that I also knew from a young age that I was a gay man. And so trying to find a way, away for myself in a religion that told me that I was going to burn in hell for eternity was challenging. So, I look back at my life, my adolescence was one long depression with suicidal fantasies. And yet, in retrospect, I'm kind of grateful for it because I was forced to ask very deep existential questions that I think all humans have to face and ask at some point. Who are we and what are we doing here and where are we going? But for me, it became a matter of survival. I had to ask those questions at a very young age. And yes, it was painful. And I think in some ways it gave me a bit of a head start.
Okay. Now, when you say the answer was painful, it was painful because of the way society viewed
Correct.
who you realize that, well, this is how I feel
Right.
and this is who I am. Okay.
Right. Yeah. It's just, I've always been that way. As far back as I remember, and before I even knew what sex was about, I always had that propensity. I always fell in love with people of my same gender. So it's always been there. It's just the conditioning from society and religion that made me question it, and I believed for some part of my life that it wasn't a good thing.
Yeah.
Now I know better.
So tell us how you handle that and what led you to connecting to your own spirituality.
Well, I mean, I think the process is one where we have to go within and face ourselves, and face our inner demons, our self-doubt, the way that we question ourselves, however it is, because we all question ourselves and our work at some point and in different ways because of, again, conditioning and things that we may have been told when we were kids or we misheard and we took on as a personal rejection and made conclusions about ourselves that question our self-worth. So I think part of the process of spiritual evolution is cutting through all that BS and getting to the essence deep down inside that, of course, is full of worth. Of course, we are all lovable. Of course, we're infinitely worthy of love. So to me, it's just getting rid of what's in the way. And for me, that process required looking within, asking the hard questions, looking at alternative ways of expressing spirituality, learning meditation, learning about breath work. Breath work changed my life.
Okay. And
Hmm.
where did you learn about your breath work?
I learned the first time I was in Miami about 34 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and my dad was a psychiatrist. My degree's in psychology. I was on the track to get a PhD.
Mm-hmm.
After one session of breath work, I jumped tracks. I never went for the PhD because it works so fast and heals so profoundly at so many different ways. I have yet to come across anything that heals emotional trauma, psychological trauma as quickly and as effectively. And part of the beauty of it is that it's so simple. We just breathe. We breathe in a certain way for about an hour. So it's a deep practice. It's not like yoga practice, pranayama, breathing practices, which are all great,
Mm-hmm.
but you do that for just a couple of minutes during a yoga class. This is like breath work on steroids. You go deep and you breathe for about an hour and a half, and amazing stuff happens.
I like the way you said that. Breath work is like on steroids. and you practice the breath work for about an hour and a half. Can I just be cheeky enough and say, when you're doing breath work, can you just kind of explain what you do? I'm saying being cheeky because
No, it's not cheeky at all. It's a valid question. And breathwork is a large umbrella term, right? So anybody who's ever been to
I know
a
there's
yoga
different.
class has done breathwork. There's
Yeah.
different breathing modalities. Some are to increase focus and attention and to get us energized. Most of them are about relaxation and slowing down the nervous system and the heart rate and many, many benefits. This particular breathing practice, you do a circular connected breath for about an hour and a half. And just amazing things happen. People recover memories. And it's not recovering a memory just for the hell of thinking about something that happened to us that wasn't pleasant one more time. It's because in this context, we're clearing that stuff. And I can't tell you how many times in the last 30 something years that I've facilitated the process for countless humans all over the world, how quickly lives change. Like even after one session, like in my case.
Wonderful. Okay, so you've done your breath work and you've learned how to do that. So what was the next part of your journey? Please continue.
Well, I've also been doing coaching, psycho spiritual coaching for the last over 35 years. And even as a kid, I was always the kind of person that people, even older people than I was, came to me for advice. I think I carry that. I don't know if I picked that up from my dad through osmosis, but regardless, it's always been there. So I chose not to go the traditional way of getting a degree in clinical psychology and to become a therapist. Um, I went a different path, which combines sort of the cognitive understanding of like understanding the mind and the ego mind and why we do the things we do. And then with combined with the breath work, we go to the source of where that trauma lives and clears it and clear it quickly.
Mm.
That's
Um,
why it's effective.
yeah. So once you got on that path and you got to that section and you and looking back on your own life and what you went through, and then using some of those tools to go deep within you to then face that and release that, it
Yes,
made you feel so much more relaxed and so much more you, and I suppose it gave you a sense of helping you to realize who you are.
exactly. Freedom, right? Freedom and empowerment, not being having our behavior and doing things sometimes because of old beliefs or past traumas that we don't even, in some cases, don't even remember, or conclusions that we made as little kids before we had any clarity of who we were. And maybe one of our parents said something to it in a moment of overwhelm, and we took it on as true. It's like, oh my God, there's something wrong with me. Oh my God, I'm too much of this. Oh, I'm not enough of that. And none of it was real. And the tragic part of that is that we have that those beliefs, unquestioned, unanalyzed, unexamined, have been running our behaviors and getting in the way of all of our relationships. So
It's
if we're willing to do the work, right, of going within and asking ourselves, like, wait a minute, why do I believe that? And where did that come from? Then we can make real choices about who we are and what we're doing from a place of wholeness and freedom rather than out of some unresolved issue from the past.
past. No, no. And what you're saying, it's not just because of the way you were going as a person, as realizing that you liked your own gender, but what you're doing actually is what all people need to do by going within and looking at the pain that they go through childhood or from previous lifetimes, to go within and bring it out and face it in order
Yeah.
to understand who they are and how to live their life, because we're told so many things from our parents and from society and all and the rest, and sometimes it's about unlearning and relearning.
Yes. Yes. And I'm not dogmatic. I'm only dogmatic about three things, and not even dogmatic because if you help me see it a different way, I'm willing to look at it. But as far as I see it, if we want to be free, you gotta go within, right? You have to go within. There's no way around it.
Yeah, you've got to go within to dig up all the things that may be keeping you back, that may be causing you pain, that may be causing you confusion, and
Exactly.
really clean it all out so you can be the person you're meant to be.
Exactly. Right on.
So, Christian, doing that, uh, I don't even want to lead you. I said, just continue with your story. What happened and what led you? Because I know you're doing courses and so, and I'm sure it was a case. I suppose I want to go back a bit because you, as you said, you did the breath work, you discovered yourself, and you realized this is who you are. What made you want to change course and help others to do what you found you had to do and to be what, because you could have continued, as you said, along your path, realizing that and living that way, but you changed paths. So what made you feel that you wanted to change paths?
Zanzi, it was the kind of thing is that, like, I know depression, I know self-doubt, I know self-hatred. And when I found a way to free myself, like these days, no matter what happens in my life, no matter the details, the circumstances, I never ever get depressed, and I never question who I am or my sense of self-worth. So I know if that could happen in me, that can happen in anybody. So of course I wanted to share that. Of course I wanted to share with other people. It's like, hey, there's a way through, there's a way out. So I started, doing coaching. I started doing retreats. I started doing breathwork sessions individually and in groups. Then eventually I was approached by a publisher. Hey, why don't you write a book? And so that was my first book 20 years ago. And then, it's like the questions that I struggle with, like my previous book was about power. Like, how do we step into power, personal power, in a way that's not about hierarchy, control, fear, force, domination, manipulation. So as I would ask myself those questions, then I started thinking about it and writing down stuff about it, and researching and reading books about it, and that eventually it became a book. And then this most recently, the book that I just published last week, it's called Conscious Love: Transforming a Relationship to Relationships. So how do we approach love and relationships in a different way?
Yeah.
In a way that our relationships actually have a chance of working.
Okay. So it's a step by step where, like everything else, it doesn't happen all at once. As you go through, you peel off layers and you peel off layers, and you go from one stage to the other stage, and life never stops, because you're continually looking at yourself. You're continued discovering different parts of yourself, and then looking at life and looking at the different functions of your life and how you can change them. Like you said, one part was the power of yourself and understanding. Can you just explain that a little bit more for our viewers? Because there are a lot of us that live in fear. And to say the power, it doesn't just step like that. It is a process, and it is different peels. Can you go a bit deeper into it?
And most of us, like, that word is so loaded that a lot of us, and we have witnessed so many abuses of power,
Yeah.
that most of us, good-hearted people will say, wait a minute, I don't want to be that. I don't want to be an abuse power and take advantage of people and step on them and put my knee to their neck in order for me to feel powerful. It's like, no, I don't want to be that way. But what happens then is that we reject power. And then we end up saying no when inside, or saying yes when inside we really feel no, that's not okay. But because we're also afraid of rejection, we're social beings and have this need to be loved and accepted. We end up swallowing our beliefs, our preferences, our desires, our dreams, in order to have some pseudo sense of semblance of acceptance and pseudo love. So it's not a good strategy. And so then I would ask myself, wait a minute, like how do we find that balance between taking a stand for what we believe and for what we desire and for our dreams in a way that works and that is not hierarchical? And so then I came up with this book, Awakening the Soul of Power, and I talk about soulful power in contrast with worldly power, or ego power, which is the way that the world relates to power, which is hierarchical, which requires that I push somebody down, which is manipulative, which is Machiavellian, as opposed to the other kind of power, which has nothing to prove. So think of a Gandhi or a Gandalf, in their simple monastic robes, sandaled feet. From looking at them, you would never know how much power they hold until it's necessary. And then get out of the way. Like Gandhi brought the British Empire to its knees when it was at its highest point without ever shooting a gun or landing a punch. That's power.
No, you're absolutely right. And I like when you said there's soul power and there's Machiavellian and I wouldn't even say worldly power. It's the power that we feel, as you say, putting your knee to somebody's neck or punching somebody, or that aggression and that fear. And then you fear, but really they're just bullies. They're bullies
Total,
because they've been allowed to be a bully. But
total
when
bullies at the
stand,
highest level of government, at the highest level of government worldwide.
yes, yes. And we see them as being powerful, but actually, there's just these few people who are controlling a lot of people. And you think, how does that one work?
I
But if
know.
we understood, if we believed in ourselves, and we recognize that we have a say in yes or no, and not being afraid to say no, and facing whatever it is and standing firm when we know what is correct. And if we each did that and encouraged each person to do that from a soul, and this is where it is, from a soulful point of view, from our
Yes.
spirit, from our higher self, because there's a time we say yes and there's a time we say no. And we've got to know when to use that, not from an ego, as you quite rightly said. And
Yeah.
when we connect to our soul, when we connect to our spirit, and we walk in that light, when we stand up and say no, that is the time it's most powerful. Because
Thank
sometimes we have to say yes, um, because it's necessary, not to show who we are, but sometimes the other person has to learn something, and it doesn't take away from ourselves. And you
Right.
just watch.
In every relationship, there's a time for compromise. Like,
Compromise.
I want to have Chinese, you want to have Indian. All right. Well, today we have Chinese, tomorrow we have Indian, right? There's ways to
Yeah.
navigate all this stuff.
Although you might love Chinese every day, but you compromise, and you would prefer Chinese, but you have the Indian, and it's okay. And it's okay to be that. And as you say, it's compromise. It doesn't take anything away, and it makes everything on a level ground, and everybody's happy, and it goes smooth, and you haven't lost anything.
Right. And then we get clear about what it is that's negotiable and what's not negotiable. There are
Negotiable.
some things that are not negotiable.
Which then we have to stand up and say no, because that would make you or I unhappy. And
Exactly.
where that makes you or I unhappy, and you're coming from a soulful point of view, a spiritual point of view, you have to say no, because you have, your first point is to be happy from
And
your spirit.
to be true to, authentically true to ourselves.
Authentic.
Otherwise, when we override our true feelings and our desires, and we say yes in order to appease somebody, or for like to not rock the boat too much, we're selling out on ourselves. We're giving our power away.
That is correct. And if those who are listening, and then when we're talking, we're always coming back for the soul, the spirit, which is that connection to that higher force. And when you are connected to that, then the decisions you make should be coming from that higher place, and it's the right decision, when to bend and when not to bend, when
Yeah.
to compromise and when not to compromise. And that's your power to stand. And if you're in a relationship, no matter what it is, but a relationship, a one-to-one, or at work, or whatever it is, if it's not going to make you happy, if it's making you happy, then it's time you look at the situation you're in and do something about it.
Beautiful.
And maybe step
Beautifully
away, step out, leave, because there's something else there, so that you can live and be your authentic self.
Beautiful, beautifully expressed. And I have a section in the book about when to leave. How do we know
Yeah.
when it's time to leave, and how to uncouple as graciously as possible.
Yes. Yeah.
And I love what you were saying too about, you kept referencing the ego versus the soulful part of us. And I think that is so critically important, because there's a lot of confusion about that word ego.
Yeah.
Most of us who know it will think arrogance, inflated sense of self, and it is that. But there is so much more to that. And the word ego in Latin means I. So that ego is the sense of self. Like, this is Christian, that's Sensi over there. In many ways, it's illusion, both a helpful illusion, and it's also the source of all our suffering.
Yes.
Because we now feel separate, we feel alone, we feel like we believe that we can be abandoned. But here's a great metaphor, a great visual to understand the ego. If you put a baseball or a football in the center of a stadium, that's the ego.
Mhm.
Who we are is actually the freaking stadium. And
Yes.
we've allowed this tiny, tiny, tiny part of who we are to think that it is all who we are, and to run the show and to make some important, consequential choices from its very small, tiny, and always fear-based perspective. So no wonder we get into problems, and no wonder we have relationship stuff.
Yeah. No, I like the way you put that. The one little ball that we seem to think is so important when it's the whole that is important, and it's how we react. And it's so true because, and as you said, it's as though we're separate. When you say there's Zenzi, there's Christian, we are all connected. We
Yes.
are we we are who we are as individuals, but we are just a section of the whole. It's like having the ring cake, and you cut
Yes.
this and you make it into sections, and you give the sections different names just because so you can identify those sections. But together, it's the one ring cake.
Exactly.
You can separate that ring cake and give it to different people. You have this one, and you have the second one, and you have the third one, and you have the fourth one. And so you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, maybe 10 sections. But
Yes.
actually, it's the one ring cake. So just
Yes.
because you give
Yes.
it different names doesn't mean it's
Absolutely.
not ring cake. It's still the ring cake.
Absolutely. And we think, we get confused because we think that sounds kind of woo-woo, spiritual stuff. Wait a minute. How do you mean we're all interconnected?
Yeah.
But I don't know if you remember this movie called I Am, a documentary in which the guy who is the director, I forget his name right now, but he's sitting on the table. There's a bowl of yogurt with electrodes connecting the electrical activity of the yogurt. There's no physical connection between him and the bowl of yogurt. And then the interviewer asks him, well, how's your relationship going? Knowing perfectly well he just got divorced recently. And the yogurt has an emotional response, like measurable.
Yeah.
And they'll ask him, have you met with your attorney lately? Another emotional response from the yogurt. So if we're connected to the bacteria in a bowl of yogurt, how can we not be connected to each other?
And and all that is happening is that at the time, your connection, your level of consciousness may be here, and the other person's level of consciousness may be there. Now, one or two things can happen. You can either influence this person so they raise their level of consciousness. Actually, three things can happen. You can either influence this person to raise their level of consciousness, and therefore when you're the same, then you go along nicely. Or this person will influence you to lower your level of consciousness to come down to them, and then you can move. But if your level of consciousness is so strong and their level of consciousness is strong, and therefore you cannot find that balance, then you separate, and it's okay. That person will find somebody at their level of consciousness,
Yeah.
and you will find somebody at your level of consciousness, and
Yeah.
all is well.
Yeah.
And that's just how it is.
I totally agree, and I recommend against lowering our level of consciousness to match somebody else's, because those never work.
No.
And when we sell out on our real truth, it eventually turns into resentment. It has to.
Resentment and anger.
Yeah.
That's when you get anger and hate, and then it starts to get ugly.
Yeah.
So it's us recognizing, again, from what to go within to find your authentic self. It's having the strength and the courage to recognize who we are as individuals.
Yeah.
And then looking, and I'm talking from a relationship point of view now, which is probably the easiest way, and then looking at the relationship you have with somebody else and having the courage to recognize, does it match or doesn't it? And when you've worked to try and match it and it doesn't match, it's not about disliking the person, it's loving them enough to let them go.
Yes.
And hopefully they're loving you enough to let you go so you can find your balance and they can find their balance and their
Yes.
happiness. And it's again re-looking in a positive way and understanding that we're all connected, we're all one. Life is eternal and we're here to learn and to grow. And to grow is to raise your level of consciousness. But everybody will do it in their own way and in their own time. And you can't force them if they're not ready.
And it goes back, what you're saying goes right to what I write about in Conscious Love. Like, how do we approach relationships? And I talk about 10 reasons why we get into trouble with relationships and why they end up not working.
Yeah.
And so when we talk about conscious relationships, to me, that means that we approach it from a place is like, we know we are whole. We don't need, if we're approaching the relationship because you are going to make me happy, you are going to be a sense of fulfillment, forget it, hang it up. Not going to work. Not going to work, and it's not their job to do that. Right?
No, it's not.
We can do that. So if we're approaching relationships for that, forget it. Forget it. Like, so when we approach it consciously, it means that we know we are the only ones who are going to make ourselves happy. Then we use the relationship consciously as a way to speed up our process. Because if we're doing relationship consciously, we all have blind spots in the back of our heads that we're never going to see. But if we're using the relationship consciously, boy, can I see it over there.
Yeah.
And so, but it's clear that the more whatever they do that gets our goat, the clearer it is that we're doing that ourselves in some other way.
Christian, I love when you say that, because it is so true that we don't realize that when we see something negative in somebody, it's more likely that the negative in them is a reflection of the negative in ourselves.
Yes.
And sometimes we know that, and I have to be honest, I know that, and sometimes I forget it. And I can get, and I have to be reminded.
Yes.
And it is and this is life. As much as we're having this conversation, I'm sure you're still making those mistakes. Am I saying? Am I right?
Yeah, it's by definition, it's a blind spot.
It's a blind spot.
It's hard to see here, but if we do it right, if we're doing it consciously, then I can see it there, right? That's projection. That's the nature of projection. It's back here, like when we go to a movie and we're looking at the screen in front of us, but the source of it is really back there.
Yeah.
So the same thing in relationship. The more whatever they are doing gets our goat, the more clear it is that we're also doing that. We can't accept it here, so we judge it and make it wrong over there.
Yeah. And this is why I say you're probably still doing it, because we forget it. I'm still doing it. And, for our viewers to remember, as we're going through this path and we see things and we understand it, we forget it and then we come back to it. And it's a constant working. It never stops because we're growing. And sometimes this is another thing. It doesn't always come in the same form. It will come in a different way, and yet it's the same thing, and you think, I've been there before.
Yeah, I thought I was done with that. Oops, there it is again.
This time it didn't come pink, it came blue. It's like, wait, this is the same thing again. And this is how life works. It says, oh, have you learned that lesson? We shall see. And then it will come back in a different form, but it's the same thing.
Yeah, and that's why our relationships sometimes feel like it's the same boring movie, only with a different actor, a different co-lead, but the same kind of crap, the same kind of arguments, the same kind of drama. So at some point, we got to get clear if we want to be free and say, wait a minute, there's one common denominator in every one of those arguments, in every one of those relationships, and it's right here. Why am I doing that?
Because we figured out the nonsense inside, and again the nonsense inside will come out and you think, right, I've done that, but there could still be some there that doesn't want to let go, and it'll shift itself in a way to try and hold on. And so it's a constant working. Christian, Knowing this, what do you advise people to do? Because it is a constant working. What can they do to really shift that and even test themselves to make sure that they have shifted it, or they, as much as they can? Because as I said, it comes at different levels and in different ways. And I'm actually answering it myself, because as we do grow, it will come at a different level to test you again, and you're working on it again, and you grow higher, and it'll come again, and it's there really to help us to grow and to clean,
Absolutely.
to be our authentic self. Do you see what conversation does? And this is why I say to my viewers, conversation with people sometimes is just a conversation, and you will see things so clearly, and you can answer it yourself.
That's it. That's it. And in terms of what to do, it all goes back to self-awareness, right? Otherwise, why do we do the things we do?
Yeah,
Why do we keep attracting the same kind of pattern in relationships? Why do
yeah,
we keep getting sucked into the same kind of old, boring argument?
yes,
So it's like, oh, wait a minute. So maybe next week somebody says something to us and we react the same old, boring way, and then we regret what we said or did. But maybe the third time, 3 weeks from now, it's like, oh, wait, there I go again. I was
mhm,
about to get sucked into it yet again. It's like, wait a minute, deep breath.
yeah,
Why am I feeling this? Why am I feeling disrespected? Am I feeling, because it's really not about the argument or whatever they did. It's really what got triggered inside of us that then we are defending
yeah,
or attacking back. But often it comes from a misunderstanding that we're taking stuff personally that doesn't need to be interpreted that way.
yeah. No, no,
And so it becomes a matter of the more we do the work, the easier it becomes. It does
yeah,
become second nature. It gets easier. We get sucked into those arguments less and less. And when we do, we spend less time stuck in them. What
yeah,
used to take a week to navigate takes 3 days, and now takes 3 hours, right? When we're doing our relationships consciously and both parties are willing to do the work,
yeah,
it is well worth it.
yes.
Well worth
And
it.
yes, it's about self-awareness. At the end of the day, the things that are going on that are making us unhappy, it's about us. We've
Mhm.
got to look at us, what we are attracting. And
Always.
we have and it's an old saying, like attracts like. So it's about looking at ourselves, looking at our own thoughts, looking at our own reactions, and saying, why is this so? What is it inside of me? What is it I need to do to
Right.
change? What's
Right.
going on with me? And
Right.
looking at not that person, but your life, and maybe something you want to achieve, and you're not doing it, and you have to say, why are you not doing this? And then concentrate on you. And when you concentrate on you, and not just realizing that it's you're alone, you're not alone, it's asking your higher self for that help. Because
Correct.
that's another thing, never think you have to do it alone. Have you found that, Christian?
Yeah, no, it's like we were talking about before. It's those feelings of being alone and isolated and abandoned are just illusion.
Yeah,
They're misunderstandings of that little ego mind that we were talking about that feels alone.
yeah,
Ken Wilber, who writes about this stuff really brilliantly, talks about how humanity hasn't always had a sense of self,
mhm,
hasn't always had an ego. Right.
mhm,
As far as we know, we're the only species that has that sense of individual separate personality. There's some theories that the elephants, the higher primates have that as well, but we don't know for sure.
mhm.
Right. They'll do an experiment where they'll put a dog over or a cat, put ash on them, and they'll in front of a mirror, and they'll interact with that image as if it was another dog or cat. If
Yeah,
you put a gorilla or a chimp, you put ash on their shoulders, put them in front of a mirror, at some point they go like this.
mhm.
So they know that's them, but what
Yeah,
that means, we really can't jump to conclusions.
yeah,
So when we approach things that way, like we're all in this together, we're all interconnected, rather than feeling separate and judgy, and you would do this and you would never do that, and I would never do that because I'm sitting over here and I'm separate.
mm,
It just keeps on that sense of separation. If we go with the assumption that we're all interconnected and whatever you do that gets my goat, I'm doing it a different way,
yeah,
then we can learn from it. And so
Yes.
here's an example that might make it easier to understand that. For some years ago, I was dating somebody who's disappeared. It was nothing serious, but all of a sudden, no message, no email, no phone call, no show at the meeting, nothing. I didn't get it, right? I was focused over there. I wonder what's going on, right? Called him at work. He's not working there. So now I'm thinking, is it drugs? Is there alcohol? What's going on, right? So I was focused there. I didn't get it. So then I was working with a literary agent in New York at the time who was really good about communications. And a week goes by and I haven't heard back from her. Okay, now I got my attention. Two people, different walks of life, who are kind of doing the same thing, right? But because it's blind spots, let me focus over there. What are they doing, right? They're not showing up. Got it. They're not doing what they said they would do. They're not keeping their word. They're not keeping their agreements. All right. So I can see it clearly over there. Let me turn that mirror around. How am I doing that? It took me a few days because I was looking at my relationships. Am I showing up? Yeah. Am I doing what I said I would do? Yeah. Am I keeping my word? Yeah. Am I keeping my agreements? Yeah. Until like 3 days later, it hit me in relationship to my writing. Right. So in that area of my life, I wasn't showing up for my writing. I wasn't keeping my agreements. Like said, I'm going to finish that chapter by such a date. I didn't do it. I didn't renegotiate it. I just kept going, doing other important things, but I wasn't showing up or keeping my agreements to myself in relationship to my writing. But here's the beauty of how this stuff works when we make it conscious. Within an hour, it's like, wow, when I had that insight, shit, I'm doing the same thing. Right? I'm not showing up. I'm doing the same thing they're doing it, but in relationship to myself. Within an hour of me having that insight, they both called. Like no longer did I need to create an external drama situation so that I would get to see. It's like, wait a minute, either show up for your writing or not, right? But choose it consciously.
Wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. And after then, both parties were doing what they said they were doing and everything started to flow again.
Exactly.
Marvelous. It's so marvelous. And how our higher self can talk to us, can show us something to help us move what we need to move and do what we need to do. And it's about looking at us, right? They're doing this. What am I doing?
Exactly.
And as soon as you clear that, things start to flow again.
Exactly.
And so therefore, we create the blockages in our own life, whatever they are. We have to look at what is it that we're doing to create those blockages.
Yes.
And,
right. And why do we keep attracting that same kind of person? Yeah. Why do we keep attracting that same kind of pattern in relationship?
Yeah.
Right. And then look inside, and it's not easy. It's hard work, but it is so worth it. Because once we see it and we make whatever corrections and adjustments we need to make in here, then we stop attracting that kind of drama.
Yeah. Christian, you're lovely. Because you're speaking my language, this is, and we don't realize it. And I know my viewers are probably sitting there and thinking, oh my gosh, it's hard. It's hard. Some of the things can be quite easy. Oh yeah, I do that. But some of it is so deep. And when you're really suffering, you have to dig deep and look at yourself, because we tend to paint ourselves so beautifully, and when sometimes it's not really beautiful, there's some mud and there's some paint there that needs to be cleared, because we are beautiful, but if it's not flowing and giving us the happiness that we want, then there's some clearing, cleaning and decluttering to take place.
Yes. And the tragic thing is that we end up doing the opposite most of the time, right? Like we don't want to feel that stuff. We don't want to look at it. So we run the other way. We project it and make it wrong over there. We medicate, we self-medicate with alcohol and drugs and food
Thank
and
you.
sex and shopping and
Yes.
everything, right? Anything not to feel, but then we can't sweep that stuff under the rug. If we try to do that, it's only going to fester and get worse.
Yeah. I love what you just said. Instead of looking at it, we go in the opposite direction, and that can result in alcohol, drugs, obesity, picking the wrong person, making excuses because we don't want to face and acknowledge that it all begins with us.
Yeah,
We
that's
are the main person in our life.
without a
And,
doubt.
and therefore, we are, and this is it, we are the priority. And
Yeah,
that's not being selfish or ego. We are the priority because if we get us right, then other things will flow because we'll know when to step aside and let things go past, or when to stand still and face what we need to face for good or whatever.
that's right. I mean, we've been conditioned to believe that self-care is selfish.
Thank
It's
you.
not. It
It's
is
not.
mandatory. If we don't respect ourselves and take care of this, how can we expect anybody else to do that? We're not
Thank you.
putting that out into the world. We're putting into the world, I don't value myself. So that's
Thank
what we're going to get back from the world.
Thank you so much. It's mandatory. If
Mhm.
we don't respect ourselves, how can we expect others to respect us? If we don't love ourselves, how
Thank
do we
you.
expect others to love us? And therefore, what levels are we creating for ourselves? We don't
Right.
love ourselves. People treat us like trash, and then we think, well, that's how it is. It shouldn't be. That's
That's
how it is because that's how we think that we are, and that's so wrong. And if
that's
we,
right. And at some point, if we're putting up with the disrespect,
yes,
at some point we become complicit in that. Why are we putting up with that?
thank you. We're
We're doing
encouraging it.
disrespecting here first.
Yes, yeah. Oh, Christian, you're so right. Christian, it's been lovely. What is it that you would like to say? No, before I even get to that part, you have written how many books?
I've written 3 books now.
Can you give us those names for people to hear
Yeah.
so that if they're interested, they
The
can?
first book is Coming Out Spiritually. The second book is Awakening the Soul of Power. And this last book that just came out last week on Friday is Conscious Love, Transforming Our Relationship to Relationships.
And how can people get your books, please?
They can order at their local bookstore if they want to support them. They're also available on Amazon online.
Okay, fine. And apart from your books, I heard you say earlier on in your conversation we're doing retreats. And so are you still doing retreats? Do you
Yes.
do workshops? Are you working one-to-one with anybody?
All of the above. And for people to find out information about that, they can go to my website, which is soulfulpower.com. SOULFULPOWER.com. And they can just shoot me an email from there.
Okay, so soulfulpower.com to connect with Christian. You've heard his books. They're on, you can go to the bookshop and order them, or you can get them on Amazon. And before I say goodbye to you, Christian, thank you so much for being on. What is there a little gold nugget or a big gold nugget you would like to leave with our listeners to help them through looking at their problems or in the path they're going through?
All the answers are within. And so it all begins by self-awareness, like we were saying before, noticing why we do the things we do, and then we can get clear about why those things are and choose otherwise. Make choices that honor who we are
Yeah.
authentically.
Yeah, and I think one of the things is to have courage to value yourself.
Absolutely.
So, Christian, thank you so much for our talk today. I know I thoroughly enjoyed it. So much has come out. And to my guests who have joined us from wherever, thank you for joining us today. And until next time, take care and be well.
Thank you,
And
Cindy.
be yourself. Bye for now.